In this video on the video series on visual presentation of data, we're going to be talking about color, and specifically how do you choose colors for your scientific figure making so that you're doing it with purpose and possibly with style as well. So picking colors is pretty fun. I think it's fun, but it's a mapping process. You have numbers, okay? This is data, and you might have a lot of numbers. And so the process of picking colors is how do you actually map a set of numbers onto the rainbow? And obviously, as I've shown you in this way, it becomes obvious that there's like an infinitude of different ways of doing so. So there's not one right solution. What we're talking about this video are some guiding principles of how you should generally do this in a way that's explanatory rather than getting in the way of conveying information, and some ways that you can do it so that you're actually showing off your personal style as well instead of doing the most generic thing possible. So the way you do this, I'm going to give you some general principles first, and then we're actually going to unpack some of these ideas and give you some examples. So my first and foremost advice in picking colors for your scientific figures is use color to convey meaning and to draw interest. If it doesn't need to have a color, don't use one. Use black, white, and gray. Okay? If it doesn't need a color, just don't use it. It's really unnecessary. Don't do it just because it's pretty. Okay? It's not a good idea. Don't do it. So if you're going to use a color, make sure that there's a reason you're using that color. The second advice is that once you have decided you want to use a color, you have to decide on which color you're using and a color scheme, because you might be using multiple colors. If you have a color and a color scheme, the color scheme should have a meaning. There should be a correspondence that blue means negative and then red means positive, or whatever it is. And whatever that mapping is, it should be consistent within the figure. Don't use blue to mean positive and then red to mean negative in two panels that are side by side. Super duper confusing, okay? Don't ever do it. The meaning should be consistent within a figure at a minimum. And ideally, if you're using multiple figures in a figure or multiple plots within the same presentation, the color scheme can carry through as well. And the reason you want to carry through that color scheme is because it really helps your audience unpack and understand what you're talking about. Because if they're used to looking at red being one thing and they're going to see it later on, 20 minutes later that something else is red, they're going to be like, oh, is it like that other red thing that I saw? And if the answer is yes, then they're going to have an easier time understanding what you're talking about. So pick colors only if you need to, and if your colors mean something, and they should always mean something, have that meaning not change. Be consistent. The third piece of advice is that there's actually a correct way of choosing a color map depending on the nature of your data. I know I said earlier there's no right way of doing it. There's not one right way of doing it, but there are some principles of right ways of doing it, and we're going to be talking about that in a second. And last, I think it is possible for you to not just, have this be a bland exercise of plotting data. It is possible for you to do it in such a way that shows off your style and your aesthetic, and you're allowed to have a little bit of personality even if you're making a very technical data presentation. So you, along those lines, my recommendation is to always avoid the default colors. Whatever software you're using, it always has default colors. You should probably always change them. You can do better. I believe in you. Okay, so let's talk about colors. All right, so when you're using colors, usually you're trying to show some underlying features of the data by mapping it onto colors. So let's do one example first. Let's assume you have what's basically a two-dimensional Gaussian. So here's a Gaussian, okay, so like this little roundy, very round, smoothie thing that I'm just gonna spin around in a circle, and that's what I'm plotting here. This is the color map of this spun around in a circle, okay? Where the top is this middle part here, and it sort of just goes down all the way around. That's the data I'm showing. That's the underlying data. This is the color map that shows that data, okay? Now we're looking at this plot, and we're seeing something that are not in the data. Specifically, because the color map that I've chosen, this very rainbowy color map that I've chosen, there's a couple of basically illusions. I'm seeing this cyan ring here. There's also this yellow ring, and there's a couple of other rings that are in here. These rings are not real. They're not in the data. And if I just change the color map from this color map to a different color map, Perula over there, or a gray color map, or, oh, goodness forbid, an HSV color map on the right-hand side there, you can see that by changing the color map to show exactly the same data, the data looks completely different. Okay, completely different. You can play tricks on yourself and your readers by just choosing a color map, and that's one of the reasons you really want to be doing this carefully. I've already pointed out these ridges here that are in the jet color map, okay? And they're particularly troublesome because they make it look like there's jumps in your data, there's cliffs in your data, where I showed you the underlying data, it's a smooth map. There's no jumps, no cliffs, okay? And so the fact that these look like these ridges exist in the data set, it's not real. And so your choice of a color map here in using jet, my choice of using jet, is misleading the audience. It's making it look like something is in the data set that is not actually there. Now, this problem is slightly better in the Parula color map over there. There still does appear to be some rings, but it's not like as bad as the jet color map. In the gray color map, you can see that it doesn't look like any rings at all. So this is actually like the most faithful way of preserving the smoothness of the underlying data set, that two-dimensional Gaussian data set that I was looking at before. But it's a little boring. It's just gray, you know, it's okay. There's nothing wrong with it. And it's a little bit hard to see the small changes in it. You can kind of like, it's a little hard to see by eye where the slope is particularly steep versus where it's kind of shallow. And so this gray color map, it's pretty good, but it's not perfect depending on what I'm trying to show. So I'm just showing it here because it's a thing. Now, finally, and this is the most distressing thing about that HSV color map over there, the color of the bottom of the hill and the top of the hill are exactly the same. They are red, okay? So it's red in the middle, which is supposed to be the tallest part of my data set, and it's red on the sides, which is the lowest part of my data set, which is confusing because it's actually inaccurate. It is wrong because it's incorrect, okay? HSV is it's called a circular color map because it's all the way around. It's only suitable for visualizing circular data. Like if I'm plotting something that's like an angle, right? Like theta goes all the way around from 0 to 2 pi, then I can use a circular color map HSV. If its data set is not circular, do not use a circular color map. Use one of these other ones. There's lots of different choices. Okay, so there's a couple of other things that we should consider, and one of them is, as I talked about in all those color maps before, we have to choose a color map, the type of color map, not the exact one, the type of color map, depending on the nature of the data that we have. For example, any kind of numerical data, numbers, like continuous numbers or even ordinal numbers, has a sequence to it, right? They have numerical value, and there's a notion of what's smaller and what's bigger. So that's sequential data. If you have sequential data, you should pick a sequential color map, something where it logically makes sense visually, where something is getting smaller or bigger. Okay, it could be a quantity, like how tall something is. It could be time, earlier versus later. There's a sequence to it. If there's a sequence to your data, pick a sequential color map. There's another type of slightly related sequential color map where it's divergent. I call it divergent because it is sequential. Quantity does matter, they're smaller and bigger, but it goes to both sides of zero. There are things that are negative and things that are positive. Okay, so here what we want to do is we want the thing that's to stand out the most is what is the most negative thing and what is the most positive thing. And we also want the middle to be neutral, okay? Because zero doesn't matter. Maybe this is a data set of change. So it matters if it's zero because nothing's changed and we don't want to look at it. And maybe I want my audience to look at the most negative things where it's gotten the smallest and the most positive things where it's gotten the biggest. And so this class of color maps is called diverging because the middle is some neutral color that usually doesn't draw a lot of attention by the eye. And there is an extreme negative number and there's an extreme positive number. And there are a variety of different colors that you can choose of how you go about going from the most negative numbers to the most positive numbers. The important thing being that you maintain the middle, okay? You don't want to shift it so that zero is somehow like light blue instead of this like very neutral beige color in the middle. So that's something you want to be careful of when you have diverging data. Those are numerical data, something where the quantity of it matters. If you have data that is qualitative, where it's categorical, where it's like literally apples and oranges, they're just not the same thing, right? If you have apples, oranges, and bananas, they're just not the same thing. You should pick what's called a qualitative color map, where there's a variety of different colors that are designed to be as different from each other as possible, no matter which ones are next to each other. So that's really different than sequential data color map and the diverging data map. So if you have something that's categorical, where you want to emphasize the fact that there's lots of categories and they're just different from each other, then pick one of these color maps, because otherwise you're going to have illusions where things look like they're similar, where they're not, because they're actually different things. So those are different color maps, and those are usually built into whatever software you're using. So if you're using Python, you might be using Matplotlib or Seaborn or something. They all have built-in color maps. You can, and it's relatively easy to, make your own color map. So this is one example from a website on the internet. There's lots of other ones. I'm just showing you one example where you can even do something like pick an image that you particularly like, a picture you took of your garden, right? Or a dress you particularly like, upload it to this website, and it will make a color map for you. It'll make you a color scheme. And then you can then import this color scheme into the software so that you can actually tune it in a way that shows off your design aesthetic in making it so that your paper or your presentation stands out and doesn't look like you made it with default colors. If you don't want to upload your own, you can always, pick something that you like their design aesthetic. Okay, so for example, if you're really into Life Aquatic and Wes Anderson, there are people on the internet, if you just Google it, who have taken the time to design color maps that reflect the design aesthetic of movies, for example, or different cartoons, whatever it is that you're really into. Okay, so this is something that I do sometimes if I just wanted to have a color map that is reminiscent of a design aesthetic that I really like. For example, from a director or from an artist that you like, for example. These are all things that you can do to make it so that you are showing off data. It's very technical, it's very correct, but it also shows off a little bit of your personality as well. One thing to be aware of is that there are folks among the population, approximately 1 in 20 people, have some version of color blindness. And so this is a test for one type of color blindness. If you are looking at these dots and you're staring at me going like, it's just a bunch of dots, there's nothing there, it's possible that you have some version of color blindness. It's not the only type. It's very easy for you to see the number that is inside those dots. That means you are able to see you are able to see color in the way that most people are typically able to see the colors. So what we want to do is not just lose people. I definitely don't want to make a plot that just loses 1 in 20 people so that they can't see it, right? So if I'm designing especially a new color map, I want to make sure that it is as accessible as possible to as many people as possible. Because at all times, even though we're trying to show our own style, show our own aesthetic, clarity trumps beauty. I would rather it be clear and communicative rather than be beautiful because, it looks like Wes Anderson or whatever it is. And so there's a couple of different recommended contrasting color pairs that are known to be accessible to the most common types of color blindness in the population. So a common one is this kind of like orangey to blue thing that you can do. And you can also make a divergent color map out of that, where you can go from orange to white to blue, for example. So a purple to green contrasting color pair also works. And if you just basically look around the internet, there's actually tons of resources to be able to recommend color maps that are accessible. And you can also, if you made up your own, you can actually run it through a website and figure out whether or not it is likely to be accessible to folks who are not able to see colors in the way that that the majority of the people in the world can. Another trick is to find a friend who actually is colorblind and just show them your figure. And I used to have a close friend who was like that, and so they would end up looking at a lot of my figures. I was like, "Can you see this? Does it look all right to you?" And if they can see it, it's probably all right. Okay, so at all times, when we're picking colors, if we're designing a storyboard, if we're trying to figure out what axes to use and how to label them, we are always striving for the 4 C's here. You're going to pick colors that help you make the goals of this figure as compelling as possible, okay? And then so using clarity and conciseness in your colors is one version of evaluating your plot critically. Does it need color? Are we picking the right colors? Are the colors making the point more obvious, or is it actually getting in the way of making my story more clear? So this is what we're remembering, okay? This is the guiding principle in everything we're doing, including how to pick colors. So that's the video on how to choose colors. Next up, we're going to be talking about workflows.